Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Waleed Climate Insight. I'm your host, Waleed. If you rely on accurate weather updates or simply want to stay ahead of dangerous conditions, today's forecast is extremely important. A dramatic shift in the weather pattern is now underway across the United States, and this transition could bring severe storms, damaging winds, hail, isolated tornadoes, and heavy snowfall over the next several days. Right now, the latest model data shows a warmer anomaly spreading across the central and eastern United States, while a colder air mass is pushing in from the western regions. This creates a strong contrast in temperatures, which is exactly what fuels powerful storm systems. As we move toward the end of February and into early March, this pattern may flip once again, allowing colder air to return across much of the country. In simple terms, this upcoming warm spell may be nothing more than a false spring. Let's talk about the active storm system developing over the south and southeast. Starting Friday and continuing into Saturday, thunderstorms will begin forming across parts of Texas and neighboring states. At this stage, tornado risk remains low, but there is already a measurable threat for hail and damaging winds. Some areas are seeing a 5% hail probability, which may sound small, but it is enough to cause localized damage. By Saturday evening, this system strengthens. Low-level winds increase and conditions become more favorable for organized severe weather. Overnight Saturday into Sunday, we are likely to see a QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system. This typically appears as a long line of storms capable of producing widespread straight-line winds. Within this line, isolated tornadoes can sometimes develop very quickly. The highest concern areas for Sunday include Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. While this is not expected to be a major tornado outbreak, one or two isolated tornadoes cannot be ruled out. The primary hazards will be strong wind gusts and hail, but residents in these regions should remain weather aware throughout Sunday and into early Monday. As this storm exits toward the southeast, additional thunderstorms may affect Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Some of these cells could become briefly intense, especially near the low-pressure center. Gusty winds may continue behind the system, with speeds potentially reaching 40 to 50 miles per hour in some southern areas, which could lead to scattered power outages and tree damage. Now let's discuss snowfall expectations, because there has been a significant overnight change in the forecast. Earlier projections suggested a potential snowstorm for parts of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. However, newer ensemble guidance shows that coastal low-pressure strengthening is not occurring. The storm remains relatively weak, meaning snowfall chances in the eastern United States have dropped sharply. At this point, a major snow event for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast is unlikely. On the other hand, the western United States tells a very different story. A powerful storm system is expected to move along the west coast next week, bringing heavy rain to lower elevations and feet of snow to higher terrain in California, the Rockies, and parts of the north-central states. This system will then move toward the Great Lakes before continuing into Canada. Flooding is possible in parts of California, while mountain regions could see significant snow accumulation. Even though the east is missing out on this snow, the west will experience substantial winter impacts. This storm track continues to trend farther north, which explains why eastern snowfall has been pushed off the table for now. So here is the big picture. Severe storms are expected across the south from Friday through Monday, including damaging winds, hail, and a small tornado risk. Snow chances in the east have decreased dramatically, while the west prepares for heavy snow and potential flooding. After this brief warm-up, colder air may return late February into early March, reminding us that winter is not finished yet. Let's now break this down in more detail, focusing on where the highest risks are developing and how this storm system will evolve region by region over the next several days. Starting with Friday, thunderstorm activity begins across western and central Texas before gradually expanding eastward. While tornado chances remain low during this early phase, there is already a clear signal for hail-producing storms. Some of these storms may become semi-discrete, meaning individual storm cells could briefly intensify near the surface low. These types of storms are often capable of producing hail and sudden wind gusts. Residents across central and southern Texas should stay alert, especially during the late afternoon and evening hours. By Saturday, the storm system strengthens and shifts toward the deep south. Thunderstorms will become more widespread across Louisiana, southern Arkansas, southeastern Oklahoma, and eastern Texas. At this stage, damaging straight-line winds become the primary concern, with hail remaining a secondary threat. As the atmosphere becomes more organized, storms begin transitioning into a more linear structure, setting the stage for a QLCS event later that night. Saturday evening into early Sunday marks a critical window. During this period, stronger low-level winds develop, increasing instability along the advancing cold front. This is when the quasi-linear convective system is expected to form. These storm lines are notorious for producing widespread wind damage and occasionally brief, fast-moving tornadoes embedded within the line. While these tornadoes are usually short-lived, they can form with little warning. Sunday appears to be the most active day for severe weather. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle face the highest risk. Along the main storm line, damaging wind gusts are likely, with isolated tornado potential continuing through the afternoon and evening. Ahead of this line, warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico will fuel scattered storms, some of which may rotate briefly. These prefrontal storms can also produce localized tornadoes, especially closer to the surface low. As the system moves east Sunday night into Monday, storm activity spreads across Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, and parts of Virginia. While overall intensity begins to decrease, isolated strong storms remain possible, particularly across Florida and coastal areas. Behind the main system, cold air surges southward, bringing gusty winds that may reach 40 to 50 miles per hour in parts of the southeast. Now let's shift to rainfall totals, which are becoming increasingly important, especially for drought-stricken regions. Earlier projections showed the possibility of very heavy rain across the southeast, but since the low-pressure system is staying relatively weak, rainfall amounts have come down. Current guidance suggests most areas in the south and southeast will receive between 1 and 2 inches of rain over the next 5 days. Although this is less than previously expected, this rainfall will still be beneficial for many regions experiencing moderate to severe drought. Portions of the southeast, the Ohio Valley, and parts of the Great Lakes region desperately need this moisture. Even the Four Corners region and the Pacific Northwest will benefit from incoming precipitation associated with the western storm systems. Along the west coast, particularly in California and Oregon, the next storm brings additional rainfall followed by heavy mountain snow. Higher elevations in California and the Rockies could receive several feet of snow, while lower elevations may experience periods of moderate to heavy rain. This combination raises concerns for localized flooding, especially in burn scar areas and regions with saturated soils. Looking at snowfall trends nationwide, eastern snow chances have diminished significantly. Ensemble data now shows only a few model members supporting measurable snow for the mid-Atlantic or Northeast, while the majority indicate warmer timing and a weaker storm structure. This confirms that the primary winter impacts are shifting west and north rather than east. Meanwhile, the western and north-central United States remain firmly in the storm track. After impacting California, the system moves inland through the Rockies and into the northern plains before pushing toward the Great Lakes and Canada. This pattern supports continued snowfall across higher terrain and northern states, reinforcing winter conditions in those areas. Wind also remains a factor with both storm systems. Even without strong coastal intensification, post-frontal winds across the south may still reach advisory levels. These winds, combined with saturated ground, increase the risk of downed trees and scattered power outages. So to summarize part 2, Friday begins with hail-focused storms in Texas. Saturday transitions toward damaging winds across the Deep South, and Sunday brings the highest threat for QLCS-driven wind damage and isolated tornadoes from Louisiana to Florida. Rainfall will help drought areas, but is lower than earlier forecasts. Snow has largely shifted away from the east and toward the west, Rockies, and north-central regions. Now let's shift our focus to the larger atmospheric drivers behind this active pattern, because what we're seeing right now is not random. Several long-range indicators are starting to align, suggesting that this warm period may be short-lived, and colder conditions could return as we move toward late February and early March. One of the key signals we're watching closely is the Arctic Oscillation. Current data shows a temporary cold push entering the western and north-central United States next week, while much of the central and eastern regions experience above-average temperatures. However, newer projections indicate that this colder air may reemerge toward the end of February, potentially spreading farther south and east. This is important because many people assume that once warmer weather arrives, spring has officially begun. But this setup strongly suggests a classic false spring scenario. Temperatures rise for several days, people let their guard down, and then winter comes back with another round of cold air and possible snowstorms. Right now, model guidance shows above average temperatures dominating much of the central and eastern United States over the coming week. Even though it will still feel chilly in some areas, especially overnight, these readings are technically warmer than normal for this time of year, but that warmth appears temporary. As we approach the 20th of February and beyond, multiple ensemble members begin signaling another dip in temperatures across the western states first, followed by the central U.S. and potentially the southeast. If this trend continues, it could open the door for renewed winter weather, including additional storm systems and colder anomalies pushing farther south. Another index we are monitoring is the North Atlantic Oscillation. While it has not fully locked into a negative phase yet, there are early signs of weakening pressure patterns that could allow colder air to bleed back into eastern regions. This does not guarantee major snowstorms, but it does support a return to more winter-like conditions after this brief warm-up. In other words, do not assume winter is over. Let's also talk about what the short-term high-resolution models are showing. As we move through Friday, storm activity begins increasing across Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and parts of Utah. This energy then shifts eastward into the Texas Panhandle and western Texas by Friday evening. These storms will initially be scattered, but some may become strong, producing hail and gusty winds. By Saturday, the system matures further. Wind speeds increase both at the surface and aloft, helping organize storms into larger clusters and eventually into a more linear structure. This is when damaging wind potential becomes more widespread, especially across the southern plains and deep south. As mentioned earlier, overnight Saturday into Sunday is when we expect the most organized severe weather, including QLCS development. These storm lines can produce long stretches of wind damage and occasionally brief tornadoes. Even after the main line moves through, additional storms may redevelop ahead of the cold front, especially across Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Late Sunday night into Monday, storms push farther east across the Carolinas and Virginia. While instability decreases, lingering moisture and strong upper-level support may still allow for locally heavy rain and gusty winds. Once the front passes, colder and drier air filters in behind it. Meanwhile, the western storm system continues its impact. California receives additional rainfall while higher elevations pick up heavy snow. As this system moves inland, the Rockies and north-central states remain in line for significant snowfall accumulations. This reinforces the idea that winter's strongest impacts are shifting west and north rather than east. Even though eastern snow chances have largely collapsed for this particular setup, that does not mean snow is done for the season. If the colder pattern advertised for late February verifies, future systems could once again bring winter weather into portions of the central and eastern U.S. Rainfall also remains a key benefit of this pattern. Many drought-affected areas across the southeast Ohio Valley and parts of the south will finally receive meaningful moisture. While totals are lower than earlier forecasts due to weaker low pressure, this rain is still badly needed and will help improve soil conditions and water levels. So, here's the takeaway from Part 3. We are entering a transitional phase. Short-term warmth gives the illusion of spring, but larger-scale atmospheric signals suggest winter may regroup before the month is over. Severe storms dominate the near-term forecast for the south, heavy snow continues in the west, and colder air could make another appearance as February winds down. As we move beyond the immediate severe weather threat, attention turns to the next storm cycle and what the extended outlook is telling us for late February and early March. While the current system exits the southeast, another powerful disturbance begins organizing along the west coast, reinforcing an active and progressive weather pattern across the country. This next storm arrives in California early next week, bringing additional rounds of rain to lower elevations and heavy snow to higher terrain. Mountain regions of California and the Rockies are expected to receive substantial accumulations, with some locations seeing snowfall measured in feet rather than inches. This system then advances eastward across the north-central states before lifting into the Great Lakes and Canada. What's important here is the storm track. Guidance continues to show these systems favoring a more northern route. This keeps the most significant snow impacts across the west, Rockies, northern plains, and into southern Canada, while much of the eastern United States remains on the warmer side of the pattern, at least for now. Wind remains another factor with this evolving setup. Even without strong coastal intensification, pressure gradients behind these systems are strong enough to support widespread gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour across parts of the south and central United States. These winds, combined with saturated ground from recent rainfall, increase the risk of downed trees and isolated power outages. Travel could also be impacted, particularly for high-profile vehicles. Looking beyond 6 days, ensemble guidance continues to favor a colder push returning from the west. While details remain uncertain, there is growing consistency among longer-range models showing below-normal temperatures reemerging across portions of the western and central United States, with potential expansion into the east as we approach early March. This reinforces the idea that the current warm spell is temporary. Many areas experiencing mild conditions over the next week could see temperatures fall back toward seasonal or even below seasonal levels shortly afterward. If this colder air aligns with incoming storm systems, snow chances could increase once again, particularly across the central U.S. and higher elevations farther east. At the same time, precipitation remains a positive aspect of this pattern. The Southeast, Ohio Valley, and parts of the Great Lakes region are finally receiving much-needed rainfall. Although totals have decreased compared to earlier projections, this moisture will still help ease drought conditions and replenish soil moisture. The Pacific Northwest and Four Corners region also benefit from incoming precipitation, helping improve long-term water supply outlooks. However, California faces a delicate balance. While rain is badly needed, repeated storms increase the risk of localized flooding, especially in areas with recent wildfire scars or already saturated ground. Residents in flood-prone locations should remain cautious as multiple systems move through. From a broader perspective, this pattern reflects a highly dynamic atmosphere. We are seeing rapid transitions between warm and cold air masses, driven by strong jet stream activity. This is why weather impacts are varying so dramatically from region to region. Severe thunderstorms in the south, heavy snow in the west, and fluctuating temperatures across the central and eastern states. For the southeast, the main message is preparedness. Friday through Monday brings multiple rounds of storms, with Sunday posing the highest risk for damaging winds and isolated tornadoes. Even after the main line passes, lingering storms and gusty winds may continue into Monday. For the west and north-central regions, winter remains firmly in control. Heavy mountain snow, valley rain, and continued storm activity will dominate the forecast into next week. Travel in mountainous areas could become difficult, and avalanche risks may increase where snow accumulates rapidly. And for everyone watching temperatures, remember this: do not be fooled by the brief warm-up. Long-range signals suggest colder air is waiting in the wings. Late February into early March could easily bring another round of winter conditions, reminding us that the season is far from over. So as we wrap up Part 4, here's the big picture. The next storm system reinforces heavy snow in the west. Wind remains a concern across multiple regions. Drought relief continues in the south and Midwest, and colder air may return before February ends. This volatile setup keeps weather impacts on the table nationwide. As we bring everything together, it's clear that the coming days mark a highly active and transitional period in the overall weather pattern. What started as a simple warm-up has evolved into a complex setup involving severe storms in the south, heavy snow in the west, shifting temperature anomalies, and growing signals of colder air returning before winter officially ends. Let's recap the most important impacts. From Friday through Monday, the southern United States faces multiple rounds of thunderstorms. Texas begins the event with hail and gusty winds, followed by a strengthening system pushing into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. Sunday stands out as the most dangerous day, with a QLCS line of storms capable of producing widespread, damaging winds and isolated tornadoes. While this is not expected to be a major tornado outbreak, brief tornadoes embedded within storm lines remain possible, especially overnight Saturday into Sunday, and again late Sunday into Monday. As storms move eastward, Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and parts of Virginia may still experience strong thunderstorms, heavy rain, and gusty winds. Behind the front, cold air surges southward, bringing wind gusts that could reach 40 to 50 miles per hour in some areas. These post-storm winds increase the risk of downed trees and scattered power outages, particularly where soils are already saturated. Meanwhile, snowfall expectations in the eastern United States have dropped sharply. Earlier projections suggested a possible snowstorm for parts of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but weaker low pressure and warmer timing have largely removed that threat. For now, major eastern snow is off the table. The West tells a completely different story. California, the Rockies, and north-central regions remain firmly in the storm track. Incoming systems will bring periods of heavy rain to lower elevations and significant snowfall to higher terrain. Some mountain locations could receive snowfall measured in feet. As these storms move inland, winter impacts extend through the Rockies, Northern Plains, Great Lakes, and into Canada. Travel disruptions, avalanche risks, and localized flooding remain concerns in these areas. Rainfall across the South, Southeast Ohio Valley, and parts of the Great Lakes is a positive development. Although totals are lower than earlier forecasts, many drought-stricken regions will finally receive meaningful moisture. This will help improve soil conditions, support agriculture, and replenish water supplies. At the same time, repeated storms in California raise flooding concerns in vulnerable areas, especially near burn scars and low-lying terrain. Looking ahead, the bigger story is the evolving temperature pattern. While much of the central and eastern United States experiences above-average temperatures in the short term, long-range signals continue to suggest this warmth may be temporary. Arctic and atmospheric indicators point toward another potential cold push late February into early March. If that colder air aligns with future storm systems, winter weather could return to parts of the central and eastern U.S. In other words, this is likely a false spring. Just because temperatures rise briefly does not mean winter is finished. The atmosphere remains highly dynamic, and rapid swings between warm and cold are becoming more common. This keeps severe weather threats active in the south while preserving winter conditions across the west and north. So what should you do? Stay weather aware, especially if you live in the southern states affected by severe storms. Monitor local forecasts, enable emergency alerts, and have a plan in place in case warnings are issued. If you're in snow-prone regions out west, prepare for winter travel conditions and potential power disruptions. And for everyone, remember that changing patterns can bring sudden impacts with little notice. Here at Waleed Climate Insight, our goal is simple: to keep you informed, prepared, and ahead of rapidly changing weather conditions. This pattern is far from settled, and we'll continue tracking every shift, every storm, and every temperature change as new data becomes available. Before we close, here is an important disclaimer. Financial disclaimer. The information provided on Waleed Climate Insight is for educational and informational purposes only. Weather analysis, climate trends, and outlooks discussed in this content should not be considered financial, investment, agricultural, or business advice. Any decisions you make based on weather information are entirely your own responsibility. Always consult qualified professionals before making financial, operational, or safety-related decisions. Neither Waleed Climate Insight nor its host assumes liability for losses, damages, or outcomes resulting from the use of this information.